People think the worst thing a parent can do is not support your dreams. My father didn't just refuse to support mine. He killed them. He buried them. And then he handed me the shovel and forced me to dig the grave deeper every day. But what he didn't know was this. You can force a kid to quit school, but you can't stop a mind built for war. And one day, that same dropout would return as the CEO, with a termination letter, with his name on it. My name is Emma Carter. And this is how I bought my father's company and fired the man who once told me, girls don't need education. They need obedience. I was 16. A junior in high school. Honor roll. Captain of the debate team. The kind of girl teachers said would go far. But at home? I was the unpaid employee of a man who never cared where I wanted to go. My father, Richard Carter, owner of a small manufacturing company in Ohio. A man who called himself a self-made king, but acted like everyone else existed to kneel. That night, he slammed a thick envelope on our dining table. I still remember the sound. The kind of sound that tells you your life is about to break in half. Pack your things, he said. You're done with school. Starting Monday, you work for me. Just like that. No discussion. No warning. My mother tried to speak up, but her voice trembled. Like even her courage was afraid of my father. Richard, she has college dreams. He cut her off. Dreams won't put food on the table. She works. End of story. But it wasn't just the end. It was the beginning of every miserable, exhausting day that shaped the woman I became. The factory smelled like hot metal, old machines, and the kind of sweat that belongs to people who don't get paid enough. My father tossed me a uniform 2 sizes too big and pointed at the warehouse. No daughter of mine is going to sit in classrooms learning useless crap. You'll learn real work. He made me sweep floors, carry boxes heavier than me, label pallets in freezing storage. And if I ever slowed down, he'd shout so loudly the walls vibrated. Employees used to watch me with pity. Some with fear. Some with a silent question in their eyes. Why is he doing this to his own daughter? But I knew why. I was becoming smarter than him. And smart daughters scare insecure men. It was a Tuesday. We were preparing a shipment for a major client. Everyone was rushing. I was tired. My hands were shaking. I accidentally dropped a small box of components. It scattered across the floor like broken hope. My father stormed forward, grabbed the box, and threw it across the room. Then he shouted, "This is why girls shouldn't be in management or school. They're too weak. They break everything they touch." In front of the entire warehouse. Some men looked away. Some flinched. Some silently apologized with their eyes. I stood there, feeling myself shrink and burn and break. But something inside me, a small spark I didn't know I had, refused to die. Right then, for the first time, a sentence formed in my mind. One day, I'm going to destroy the way you destroyed me. But I'm going to do it legally. And publicly. And you won't see it coming. Most nights, I came home too exhausted to think. But still, I would sneak a cheap laptop under my blanket and read business case studies, finance basics, manufacturing management, auditing, supply chain, marketing. I studied every night from midnight to 3 a.m. Quietly. Secretly. Like education was contraband. By 19, I had more knowledge than half the supervisors in that company, including my father. And he had no idea. Because I worked so closely inside the warehouse. I saw everything. Missing shipments. Fudged inventory. Fake overtime sheets. Bad contracts. Cash deals hidden from taxes. Shady expenses. He wasn't just a terrible father. He was a terrible businessman. And I was watching every mistake. Like a future CEO analyzing a failing competitor. I didn't know when I'd get my chance. But I knew the day would come. Her name was Angela Cruz. A consultant hired to analyze the company. She saw something in me my father never saw. Potential. One afternoon she pulled me aside and whispered. You don't belong here. You're sharp. You learn fast. Why aren't you in college? And for the first time in years, someone looked at me like I wasn't a failure. I told her everything. She listened. Not with pity. With fire in her eyes. And then she said, I can get you into an online business program. You can study while you work. But Emma, you need to build a plan. Because a girl like you? You're meant to sit in the corner office. Not clean the floors of it. And just like that, my future shifted. From age 19 to 23. My life was a double existence. Daytime. The obedient factory worker my father believed he controlled. Nighttime. The business student building the blueprint to overthrow him. I studied leadership. Negotiation. Corporate restructuring. Financial strategy. Acquisitions. Hostile takeovers. I built spreadsheets. Plans. Simulations. Budgets. Possible investor pitches. I didn't have money. But I had knowledge. And knowledge is the first currency revenge needs. At 23. He promoted me. Not out of love. But because he was losing employees. And needed cheap labor for a higher role. He made me operations assistant. Still low, still overworked, but with access. Access to numbers. Access to contracts. Access to internal weaknesses. Access to everything a future CEO needs to plan an acquisition. He thought he owned me. But he had actually armed me. It was 2:17 a.m. My father was passed out drunk on the couch, TV blaring. My mother asleep in their bedroom, exhausted by years of silence. I sat in the kitchen, laptop open. Looking at the company's financial instability. Debt. Inefficient equipment. A poorly structured leadership chain. High employee turnover. And declining investor trust. He was sinking. Slowly. Stupidly. But with the right leader? The company could rise again. And in that moment, I realized something. I didn't want to destroy the company. I wanted to save it. Just not with him in it. That night, I began building a real takeover plan. Quiet. Elegant. Perfectly legal. Mathematically precise. Like revenge should be. Slowly, silently. Others began noticing how much I understood the business. The warehouse manager. 2 supervisors. A retired accountant. A former engineer who admired my late-night study sessions. These people, who had been mistreated by my father for years, believed in me. When you're ready, the engineer said. And if you ever take over this company, I'll follow you. A few months later, employees started coming to me for decisions. Instead of my father. And he didn't even notice. Because insecure men never see the rise of the people they underestimate. I was 24. Angela, the consultant who had once saved me, set up a meeting with a group of small investors. Pitch your vision, she said. Let them see the CEO I already see. My hands were shaking. But my voice? Strong. I laid it all out. A full restructuring plan. Retraining modules I'd secretly built. Equipment upgrades. Financial recovery strategies. Marketing solutions. A new leadership chain. When I finished, the room was silent. Then one investor leaned forward and said, "Miss Carter, we think you can turn this company around. We'll back you. If you can secure 51% ownership." My father had 46%. The rest was divided across old partners, former employees, and small shareholders. So now I knew my target. 51%. The number that would free me. And end him. 2 months later, my father stormed into the factory screaming. He swung open the office door and accused me of wasting time because I asked for new safety equipment for the workers. He slammed his fist on the desk and yelled, "You are nothing without me. You will always work for me. And the day I die, this company goes to your brothers, not you. Not me. Even after everything I did. Everything I learned. Everything I sacrificed." Something in me snapped. Calmly, quietly, I said, "We'll see about that." He laughed in my face. But that was the last day he ever laughed at me. For 9 months. I negotiated. I met shareholders. I called old partners. I built trust. I showed my plans. I used every piece of knowledge I had earned at 3 a.m. for years. And slowly, shares transferred. Votes shifted. Support grew. Until one rainy Wednesday morning, I received a message from the investors. "It's time. You've secured 51%. Call the meeting." My hand shook. I had done it. The dropout girl. The factory sweeper. The weak daughter. I owned the company. And my father had no idea. The meeting. The confrontation. The moment I slid the termination letter across the table. To my own father. The day I became CEO. And the day he realized. The daughter he tried to break. Was the one who broke him instead. People think revenge feels like fire. But that morning, it felt like ice. Cold. Calm. Precise. I walked into the company wearing the same warehouse badge my father once forced me to wear like a collar. Employees stared. Not with pity anymore. But with a quiet, electric curiosity. They knew. Something was coming. My father walked in 5 minutes late. Still adjusting his tie. Still acting like the king of a kingdom that no longer belonged to him. He didn't even look at me when he barked. "Emma, make me coffee." I smiled. "Sure," I said. "It'll be the last time you ask me for anything." He frowned. He didn't understand. Not yet. 9 a.m. Boardroom B. I sat at the long mahogany table. My documents neatly stacked. My new investors joining via video call. The shareholders sat quietly. Some excited. Some nervous. Some relieved. Then the door opened. My father stormed in. Who the hell called this meeting without my approval? I turned slowly. I did. He laughed. Mocking. Arrogant. Stupid. You? You can't call a board meeting. You don't have the authority. I slid a folder across the table. Actually, I do. He opened it. His face drained of color. Inside were the signed share transfers. One by one. Page after page. Names he trusted. People he underestimated. Contracts he never cared to read. All giving me voting power. And then, the final line. Ownership, Emma Carter, 51%. The room was silent. My father's voice cracked. What is this?" I leaned forward. It's the consequence of treating your daughter like labor instead of legacy. I opened my briefcase and removed a single white envelope. Every eye in the room followed it as I slid it across the table. For you, I said softly. He opened it with trembling hands. Read it once. Twice. And then his mouth fell open. It was a termination letter. For him. Signed by me. His daughter. His former factory worker. His former victim. You can't fire me, he whispered. I looked him dead in the eyes. Dad. I'm the CEO. And your services are no longer required. The man who once screamed at me in front of workers was now trembling like a child. You're doing this out of spite, he said. You owe me. I fed you. I clothed you. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You didn't raise me. You used me. You didn't build me. You buried me. And every night you forced me to choose survival over school. I was learning how to take your empire without touching a single illegal thing. That's why I win. Because my revenge is clean. He slammed the table. This is my company. I shook my head. No. This was your company. Now it's mine. Nobody defended him. Not one person. People he bullied for years finally watched him collapse and said nothing. Because abusive leaders die in silence. Not because people can't speak, but because nobody wants to save them anymore. Finally, he whispered. What am I supposed to do now? His voice, for the first time in my entire life, was small. I stood. Learn, I said. Like you never allowed me to. Security arrived. Not to drag him violently, but to walk him out respectfully. He kept looking back, as if waiting for me to say something. Anything. But revenge isn't about screaming. It's about choosing silence when the other person expects mercy. He walked out of the same factory he once ruled like a tyrant. And the moment the doors closed, the entire building exhaled. I stood in front of all employees. The same people who once watched my humiliation. This time, they looked at me with hope. And I said, no more yelling. No more fear. This company is going to rise. And it starts with dignity. Applause erupted. Some workers were crying. I didn't expect that. But maybe they needed a leader who wasn't afraid to build rather than break. Over the next year, updated all old machines, increased wages, introduced training programs, cut toxic supervisors, created new benefits, improved safety, launched marketing, expanded into new clients, doubled revenue. Employees weren't just loyal. They were proud. And every time I made a decision, I remembered something my father once shouted. Girls don't belong in leadership. Funny. Because under a girl's leadership, the company became the strongest it had ever been. 1 year later, my father walked into the lobby. Not as the owner. Not as the boss. But as a man looking for work. He had lost everything. Savings. Status. Pride. He stood in front of my office quietly. No yelling. No arrogance. Just defeat. He said, I taught you to work hard. I replied, no. You taught me what not to become. He swallowed hard. Then he asked, will you hire me? I looked at him for a long time. Then I handed him a sheet. He took it. And froze. It wasn't a job application. It was a brochure for a vocational training center. You need to rebuild yourself, I said. Not climb on top of people again. He looked at me with something I never expected. Respect. Real respect. Then he walked away. Not angry. Not broken. Just human. People say revenge is about hurting the person who hurt you. But the truth? The best revenge is becoming everything they said you couldn't be. And letting them live long enough to see it. My father forced me to quit school. So I educated myself harder. He forced me to work under him. So I rose above him. He tried to break me. So I built myself stronger. And in the end, I became the CEO who rewrote our family legacy without inheriting his cruelty. My name is Emma Carter. And this was not the story of how my father ruined my life. This was the story of how I reclaimed it.